You will hear a podcast interview about endangered animals and modern conservation projects. The host is speaking with wildlife conservation specialist Dr. Elena Morris. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Welcome to Nature in Focus, the program where we explore environmental challenges and the people working to solve them. Today, we are asking an important question. Can conservation still make a meaningful difference? Or are some species already too close to extinction? To discuss this, I am joined by wildlife conservation specialist Dr. Elena Morris. Dr. Morris has worked on animal protection projects in Africa, Asia, and South America. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here.
Let us begin with some individual species. Endangered animals often face more than one threat, but I understand that conservationists usually need to identify the most serious problem first.
That is correct. Take the orangutan, for example. It is affected by hunting and the illegal wildlife trade, but the greatest problem is the destruction of its forest habitat. Large areas of rainforest have been cleared for farming, roads, and palm oil production. When the forest is divided into smaller areas, orangutans struggle to find food and partners.
Sea turtles are also frequently mentioned in conservation campaigns.
Yes, plastic pollution is certainly dangerous, but many sea turtles are injured or killed when they become trapped in fishing equipment. Some are caught accidentally in large nets that were intended for other sea animals. Conservation groups are therefore working with fishing communities to develop equipment that allows turtles to escape.
What about pangolins?
Pangolins are among the most heavily trafficked mammals in the world. They are captured because some people wrongly believe that their scales have medical value. There is no reliable scientific evidence for this belief, but demand remains high. The main problem is therefore the illegal wildlife trade.
African elephants face poaching too, of course.
They do, particularly for their ivory. However, in some farming areas, another urgent problem is human-wildlife conflict. Elephants may enter fields, damage crops, and sometimes threaten people. If local families receive no support, they may see the animals as a danger rather than something worth protecting.
Our final example is the California condor.
This bird was once extremely close to extinction. Lead poisoning from ammunition remains a serious threat, but its recovery has depended heavily on a successful breeding program. Conservationists raised condors in protected centers and later released them into suitable habitats. The population is still vulnerable, but the program has prevented the species from disappearing.
That is the end of part 1. Before you hear the next part of the interview, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
The examples you have given show that conservation is not simply about protecting animals from hunters. What makes a project successful?
One of the most important factors is the involvement of local communities. A conservation plan is unlikely to succeed if it ignores the people who live near the animals. Residents may depend on forests, rivers, or farmland for their income. Projects should offer practical benefits, such as employment, safer farming methods, or support after crop damage.
So, local people need to be treated as partners.
Exactly. Another important strategy is connecting separated habitats. Roads, farms, and towns can divide a natural area into smaller sections. Wildlife corridors allow animals to move safely between these sections. This is especially important for species that travel long distances to find food or reproduce.
How do scientists know where animals are traveling?
They use several methods. Camera traps are useful, but for large animals, researchers often attach radio collars. These devices send location data and helps scientists understand migration routes, feeding areas, and dangerous crossing points.
Are breeding programs always successful?
No, they can increase animal numbers, but producing young animals is only the first step. Before animals are released, there must be a safe habitat with enough food and protection. If the original threat still exists, releasing the animals may simply place them in danger again.
You mentioned false beliefs about pangolin scales. How can conservationists address that kind of problem?
Public education is essential. Laws can reduce trade, but demand may continue unless people question traditional beliefs about animal products. Campaigns are more effective when they work with respected community leaders, doctors, and teachers, rather than simply telling people that their customs are wrong.
That is the end of part 2. Before you hear the next part of the interview, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 11 to 15.
Some critics argue that conservation projects spend large amounts of money on a few famous animals, while many less attractive species receive little attention. Is that a fair criticism?
To some extent, yes. Large animals such as elephants and tigers attract public interest more easily than insects or frogs. However, protecting the habitat of a well-known species can also protect hundreds of less visible species living in the same ecosystem. The real problem begins when all the funding is spent on one animal without considering the wider environment.
What role should zoos play?
Well-managed zoos can support breeding programs, scientific research, and public education. However, keeping an endangered animal in captivity is not automatically conservation. A zoo should contribute to a clear recovery plan, and the animal's welfare must remain a priority. Entertainment alone is not enough.
Technology now plays a much larger role in wildlife protection. Has it changed conservation completely?
It has improved the speed and quality of information. Drones, satellite images, and tracking devices can help rangers identify illegal activity or changes in habitat. But technology cannot replace people on the ground. A drone may show where a forest is being cleared, but governments still need to enforce the law.
How should we measure whether a project has succeeded?
A rising animal population is important, but it is not the only measure. We should also ask whether the habitat is healthier, whether local communities support the project, and whether the species can survive without permanent human assistance. A temporary increase in numbers may look impressive, but it does not always represent long-term recovery.
Finally, are you optimistic about the future?
I am cautiously optimistic. Some species have recovered because people acted before it was too late. However, conservation works best when action begins early. Waiting until only a few animals remain makes every solution more expensive and uncertain. We cannot save every species through emergency projects, so protecting habitats before a crisis develops is the most effective approach.
Dr. Elena Morris, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
That is the end of the listening test. You now have some time to check your answers.